That would have been a lot better if I turned on my audio. Starting the live here, gonna wait a couple minutes for people to join in, and then get started. I'll have my audio off, but yeah, this is Hardcover Live 65 Book Vibes. I'll start introducing vibes and talking about them while we're getting set up. So, book vibes are an idea we had probably about a year and a half ago now. The concept was Hardcover knows all this data about what you read and about those books in your library. For instance, we know the genres of the books you read, we know the authors, and then we have all this other data around reviews, lists, books are added to, prompts that books are a part of. And in aggregate, all that data tells us kind of a fingerprint about every book. And using that, along with a vector database and some advanced recommendation system setup, we can kind of create a system that says like, hey, I want X, give me some books that meet those conditions. And those conditions can be very broad in what they are. They could be anything from very broad, like science fiction books, to very specific, like give me recommendations based on the last 3 5-star books I read that are fantasy and not based in science fiction, that are targeting a specific audience or age group and maybe a different genre, and maybe that are similar to this author and dissimilar to this author. So kind of the idea here is that it's kind of like an advanced book search, but you're not searching for the books you know, you're searching for books you don't know about based on conditions that you do know about. So kind of an example that I had when we were kind of building this is I had been binging the We Are Legion Bobaverse series of books, and they're kind of a science fiction kind of comedy, like humorous series. Think like Star Trek meets like I don't know, something with a little whimsy to it, like Legends and Lattes or something, a bit cozy, or maybe more like Stargate, the original series. And I couldn't find other books that were like that. I wanted something that filled that comedic niche, but also were science fiction. And I think one of the things that kind of drew us to this idea of vibes was like, how do we actually generate those? Like, how do you create a system that knows enough about those books and about you personally to be able to make those recommendations? And that's what vibes ended up being, and we've been building towards. We're going to have Adam Rensel on in a few minutes. He's the creator of the recommendation engine that powers vibes, and we'll be doing some demos today, kind of showing you around how vibes work, what it looks like to create one, and a bit of a look at what's coming next, both for vibes and from the API side. Nowadays, whenever we release a new feature on hardcover, the most common question is like, hey, what's the API going to look like for this? So right now Vibes is a supporter only feature while we're in this like a preview phase. And then later on this month, we're planning on turning Vibes on for everyone to be able to experience them and be able to view Vibes that have been created on the platform. And then we're going to limit it for now so only supporters can create new Vibes. However, everyone, for users, or you have to be logged in for this to make sense, because it uses your personal ratings and things like that to make recommendations. So for all logged in users, they'll also be able to see a couple of the Vibes that we create for everyone. Those include things like a recommendation vibe. So here are the top recommendations for you across hardcover, as well as a more recent recommendation, like we have based on the last five-star books you read, or based on the last book you read, or based on the last author you read. Things like that, which are kind of ever changing. And so it's kind of fun to be able to see almost like a list that's updating for you. It's kind of like one more place to get like a book discovery in kind of a fun way. I think of it like we can't browse the aisles of a bookstore on a website, but this is kind of like your way of browsing a hardcover bookstore and seeing some recommendations based on things that you're looking for. Let's see. Make sure people are able to get in here and join, and then I'll be starting shortly on a demo. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of a demo on what Vibes are, how they work, and then we'll kind of lead in from there to a little bit of behind the scenes look at it. So let's start here. Let me share my screen. This one over here. Cool. So yeah, when we were as we were building Vibes, one of the things that stood out was how do we show people what they are and what they can do. And one of the things that kept coming up was that when we actually are doing like when you're actually looking for things, sometimes they might be like the Vibes are kind of like lists. So like a list is something like, any of these things are, book groups, like this trending on hardcover. This is a list of what's trending, or these are a list of series. While something like this, pick up where you left off, is kind of like pulling in the last book you read and adding one to that in some series. So you can kind of see like this is where I'm at in a bunch of different series. I'm really looking forward to this one, by the way. Trade of Blood, the third one in the series. I don't think I've that Anna and Din with Tainted Cup, Drop of Corruption. Super good fantasy series. It's kind of like Sherlock Holmes meets, I don't know, like a little bit of Mistborn. So other than that, let's see, we have Adam on the call.
Hey there,
I was just
sorry.
showing off the Discover page a bit. No worries.
You had the wrong time. I was an hour, had the time off by an hour on my calendar for some reason.
Oh no, I hope I didn't put it wrong in the email too. I mean, time zones are like my nemesis.
Yeah, especially with this team, right? We have a very diverse time zone team going on
Yeah,
here.
I think we had a team meeting and there were, I want to say 11 people in like 9 different time zones or something. Yeah. Um, yeah, I was just kind of easing into the Discover page a bit and then jumping more into vibes and kind of chatting about those. Um, so I think we're almost to the, once we get to the first vibe, I'll use that as an excuse to talk about them.
Okay.
So yeah, here in the Discover, we have like some recent ratings by people you follow, and you can see the ratings or reviews if they wrote one. And then kind of some aggregate things like what's most popular with your friends. And then this is the first vibe on the page based on your recent reads, recommendations based on your reading history. And I think so when you go to this vibe, it actually shows you up to 250 books recommended. And uh, this vibe is created for you by the system. And all it really has is this filter that says it's the first in a series or a standalone. And everything else is kind of letting the vibe recommendation algorithm do the rest of the work. And that might be a good place to kind of talk a bit about how that actually works. Like, um, what is what goes into generating that? Because we're not setting anything here other than that this recommendation should be for me, and it shouldn't be the first one in a series. So, what could you tell me a little bit about what happens behind the scenes for something like that, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, really, when we hit the API for Vibes, um, it's a query against a vector database. So I could go into like how the model works and how we, it, if you know anything about like machine learning too much, like preparing the data to feed into the model is kind of harder than actually building the model, in my opinion. Um, oh, kind of cutting out a second. But like really, when we're making requests to the recommendations API, we pre-populate like all the the vectors for books. So we use the model to create vectors, and then we oh man, I was actually reviewing this earlier today because the query pipeline is pretty involved. But like at a high level, we're taking like a user vector, which is basically just like a big like a number, and we're doing like a cosine similarity, like nearest neighbor for books, and then we're returning the however many books we set for the limit. Um, so like that's the collaborative ranking. So if it's just for you, then it's basically pure collaborative rating, which is a little easier to talk about because, like I said, it's just a nearest neighbor cosine similarity. Um, but like when we
So
get into like mixing in like books and genres and axioms and do I keep dropping? I feel like it's weird. Um, it gets a little bit more involved, but it's really just kind of all about like how can we mathematically like kind of like average vectors together and then find books that are near whatever that is. Um, yeah, that's kind of
so
the high level. There, I
yeah.
was going through because it's been a while since I've actually worked on recommendations, probably since February, and I was like, oh man, there's like little mini pipelines and stuff for when it actually comes to when you start mixing things together, just to try to get things a little bit more accurate, that feel nice.
so, so that whole pipeline process, the the whole goal of that is to effectively like distill down every book down to a vector, and that's kind of like the one artifact that the pipeline does. Is that right?
Well, so like the model, so it's a two towers model. So when we train it, we actually pre-compute a vector for every single one of our books. So I think the last time I looked, we've got like 2.5 million books or something like that. And so we pull those when it's running on the big beefy GPU. We run all the book IDs through it and generate vectors for all the books, and we save it off into like a big CSV basically. And then we seed the vector database with those so that we can query against them. Um, we could pull the books at query time, but the vector database is just really good at comparing vector values. So we kind of leverage the vector database purely for its query efficiency. And we're also not, it's easier to run the vector database than the model on something heavy like generating the books every single time.
That's I'm I'm reading this vector databases book to help wrap my head around some of it.
Yeah, I think even for this, we've just barely scratched the surface for like what Qdron, which is the vector database we use, can do. It's pretty crazy how much you can do with those these days.
Yeah, this similar books feature is also powered by the same recommendation system, but that doesn't take into account me. I mean, I guess we could have a tab here that says for you or something, and it just like resorts this with you in mind.
Yeah, just like adds the user to it,
Yeah,
the collaborative value to the vibe.
but
I really like where we landed with the API on this, that it's so like versatile for like different parts of the website in different ways, and it actually feels good.
So let me test something. I haven't actually done this, so I don't know if this is going to work. So if we say like the Count of Monte Cristo, and then the only thing we have is a signal that's the book, and the book is the Count of Monte Cristo. If we were to recreate this exact same thing with the exact same results, I don't know what signals we're sending for this one, but I assume it's probably like popularity 3 and book 5 or something.
Probably, yeah.
And these are, as it says up here, these weights. These are whether you want it to be more like that thing or less like that thing. So you could say you want it to be like the Count of Monte Cristo, but you want it to be science fiction. Which actually, I'd be really curious what that would look like in terms of book results.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I was experimenting with like Brandon, like sci-fi Brandon Sanderson and stuff like that a little bit, just wondering what would pop up. I forget what results I got, but it was interesting.
And these could be slightly off due to things like time since it ran, or if
your weights were a little off, maybe you had +3 on the book weight instead of +5. But
yeah,
it's got some similar books in there just at a glance, kind of different rankings. But
yeah, let's see if I put this up to 5. What does it do? A lot of the similar ones, but yeah. So now, what if we did? Yeah, let me. I'm curious what the science fiction one would be. And what's your thoughts on popularity? Like, I know you spend a lot of time trying to figure this out.
I feel like lowering popularity can give you maybe some interesting gems in the rough, but I would say that overall the average books in the list might be a little off, or feel so, maybe not off, but they'll feel off. That was always a big challenge with this, is that like if you put two books in a spreadsheet and compared them side by side, then the recommendations were kind of coming back, but like the recommendations just didn't feel good, even though like by the books they were technically similar in some ways. And so I think what was really hard was making the recommendations feel good instead of like sterile, I guess. And a little bit of popularity, like people expect to recognize some books and some of the more popular books. Like if you query fantasy and you don't see Harry Potter in the top like 50, you're gonna kind of like, well, even if I don't like Harry Potter, it still feels weird not to see Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or something like that. So I always found adding some popularity for like general recommendations just feels better in general. That was kind of my take on the popularity. We train the model. Sorry, do I keep cutting out, or is that just on my screen?
The audio is fine, but sometimes the video will like flash for a second. But the audio's been great.
So it is worth noting that the model itself has a, I think the technical term is a log Q penalty. I'm trying to remember exactly what it's called, but basically the model in the training phase penalizes more popular books. And so that it tries to learn things that are more true to the other parameters, and it it tries to get the popularity as on an even ground as possible, I guess. So even though you're kind of moving the popularity back and forth, the query time popularity isn't really coming from the model itself. We're basically saying we store how many people have read a given book, and we kind of say that we indicate that as being popular. And so when you actually put a popularity vibe in there, it's just adjusting the threshold for the amount of people that have read a given book. But the model itself tends to try to ignore popularity. I guess if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I looked at the hardcover event on Discord, and it is set to the wrong date, which is why you probably had it wrong, because it was wrong on Discord.
Oh, was it?
So now I know. But this will be recorded, so people might not show up for it live, but we'll have a recording of this, and it'll be shared on Hardcover Live.
Gotcha.
So that connects the dots a bit. So okay, yeah. Let me see what comes out of this one. I'm curious on the science fiction side.
It might not have found much crossover, to be honest. Empire of Silence, is that one? Is that's science fiction, right?
Interesting.
Sun Eater.
Yeah.
That one looks familiar. I've heard of that one before.
Tale of Galaxy Spanning Debut. Yeah. Hero despises murder. I mean, that seems pretty kind of Monte Cristo like. Yeah. So for things like this, where like Pride and Prejudice shows up here, could you talk a little bit about like why that might show up for this query?
So I'm gonna maybe admit that I'm a little naive about what the Count of Monte Cristo is actually about, as far as my book knowledge goes. So what tends to happen, and I'm trying to think here. So when we train the model with genres, right, we've got a lot of of user source data around genres. I think I saw a comment in Discord the other day about how they were trying to pull tags and genres, and there was just a lot. We just have a lot of data because people are merging their books in, and there's a lot of genres, right? The data preparation step, which I could talk about it more in depth, but it basically will go through all the genres assigned to a particular book, and it'll increment. So say that you've got like, we have a high level genre and vibes for romance. There might be like 100 different genres that are kind of romance related, and every time the data pipeline runs into one of those, it kind of adds a point for romance, right? And so like Monte Cristo might have hundreds of different genres attached to it, and there might be some crossover with Pride and Prejudice as far as like which high level genre they're kind of adding points to, and that will tend to kind of skew things towards certain genres. Like I think I saw, like we talked when I was first doing testing on vibes, I kept getting frustrated because like Hobbit had like science fiction as one of the genres on Hobbit, along with fantasy, and same thing with like 1984 had actually more votes for fantasy than science fiction. I was just like, and one of the hardest problems with this project was how do you get the genres ranked in a certain way that the model can intake, that's not sparse, that also gives good results. And so I think the current method does a pretty good job, but the reason why Pride and Prejudice might have some overlap is because of kind of how that genre data works. And you might genuinely have people like the collaborative ranking added to it that read both books too. So because if they're both kind of classic books, they might both fall under kind of like a classic book genre someplace, right?
Yeah.
Or actually, I think it's not classic books; it'd be like literature, I think, is what the probably the high level category is.
I can see that. Let me go to something more recent. So like Project Hail Mary, similar books end up being very much like this kind of space sci-fi you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
I think the classics are probably one of the harder ones. Like the more like Dungeon Crawler Carl or Project Hail Mary or these ones seem more relevant. I think it's just because classics is such a broad genre that it's hard, like you said. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, so people who tend to read Pride and Prejudice and Count of Monte Cristo, I mean, maybe they're reading more of those older classic literatures, and the collaborative ranking just tends to push those together a little bit.
It's kind of funny to see Three Body Problem as the top one for Hyperion, because I think since you recommended Hyperion to me, like it's probably been like the book I say is like my favorite book. But the last couple years, I reread Three Body Problem and rewatched the series, and they're like neck and neck on my favorite list. And it's funny that it's number one now. Similarity.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Hyperion's almost more like it's almost fantasy. It's kind of like Star Wars in that respect, where like, yeah, it's kind of like sci-fi fantasy kind of ish, like world building kind of thing. Yeah, it's always interesting to see how those stack up.
So, I know one of the things that you, as you were talking about, like those different axioms, those are these worlds, right? Or am I confusing that with something else?
Yeah, axioms. Sorry, yeah, the axiom's the term we use in the back end. But yeah, world type. Yeah. Because like where that came from is like I don't remember when I was first like the first couple of iterations and I was like trying to figure out how to make the genres work, and like eventually kind of how the genres work right now is it kind of goes from very high level and then kind of drills down a little bit, so it'll try to dissemble, like if I remove the fantasy aspect from dark romance, we can now say that like this is a romance book. And so it's I called it probabilistic genres because you're increasing the probabilities of like the more specific genres being accurate by removing kind of the higher level ideas from it. And that helped a lot to narrow down, because originally I think I was just doing something really, really naive, like you had like all these different kind of romance books, and I was trying to like be like, well, those are all romance, and you were kind of missing the whole like fantasy aspect, or if it was like a thriller romance or a mystery, whatever it might be, you almost have to separate the world from it to actually get a more accurate, segment. But
gotcha. Yeah. So what is like a negative axiom world end up doing? Is that books that aren't realistic or that are a little realistic?
So on the query side, and there was a discussion in Discord the other day about this, whether or not like negative should actually be like exclusionary. Currently, how it works is like if you think of like the vectors, like I don't know how familiar you are with like how machine learning works, how they kind of have like vectors and like vector space, and they're all you're trying to align stuff to a direction. The vector mixing thing tries to basically, when you go negative, it just tries to push it in the opposite direction by a certain magnitude from whatever you're putting the negative on. So you're not actually excluding it. You're just kind of like trying to get further away from, realistic.
I guess. See.
So if a book is already like very close to realistic, like if you were putting like a document, some sort of documentary type thing in there, or like a biography, putting negative realistic is probably not going to be enough to actually push it too far out of realistic, because a biography is very realistic. It's pretty deep. But
okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think one of the things that helped me understand the vector spaces was there was like a TensorFlow tutorial, and it like part of it was encoding everything to vectors, and then it created like this really cool like JavaScript 3-dimensional display of all of the dots, and you could like rotate it and zoom in and zoom around. And I imagine something like that, but with like however many levels our vector is. Like I don't know how many it is, like 500, 1,000, whatever.
I thought I was playing around with the visualization of like shoving all the books in to like a visualization. I'm trying to remember if I have that someplace, or maybe it was like a one-off thing that I had Claude do because I was curious or something. But like, because we store the contrastive, so we call it contrastive directions. So like if you have like a fantasy genre, there's basically like I would kind of describe it as like this is a region of vector space that kind of represents fantasy. So you could almost have like this kind of, outline of what that might look like related to other genres. It might be kind of cool at some point to like um to visualize that in some way, because they're just stored like in a Parquet file, I think. So like if you query by a genre, it pulls it out of the Parquet filing and uses that as one of the queries on the vector database. It'd be interesting to dump all those into a visualization and then dump the books out too and just see what it looks like. It'd probably look like mush, but I don't know. It might be kind of cool.
It'd be fun. I'm always a fan of those data visualization projects where it's kind of like the goal ends up being more exploration and discovery, and like, just finding unexpected books that are similar to each other,
Yeah.
and then seeing like, oh yeah, that makes sense that they're close to each other.
Yeah, that would be super cool.
And I know like you can do things like do recommendations that
Don't use me. I've been really bad. I imported my books one time, but I've just been really bad about keeping myself up to date. You can try it. I suppose I imported I have a pretty extensive Goodreads at one point that I imported.
I'm just curious. I think this is like one of the things that we talked about also being useful for, like, you and your partner are looking for a book to read, so do something like this and
that would, yeah, I
suggests.
think that would be super cool. I know, I don't know if you've done much experimenting with actually like comparing people. When I was first testing it, I would compare like, like one of our team members is I read almost exclusively science fiction. There's somebody who reads mostly LGBTQ books, and so I was curious to see where like the crossover would happen with that. And like it was all right, but I'd definitely be interested to see how it worked in like a book club setting, or or like a husband and wife that actually had all their, like, I don't know if Marilyn has all of her stuff in hardcover, if you've tried that yet, but
yeah, I think I did something with that where because technically this won't show anything she has in her library, so it's because this will only show books that neither person has in their read list, right?
yes, I think so.
Yeah. This, I mean, compared to yours, this is more literary fiction. And
you also have a very strong collaborative rating on yours because you have so many books, which I don't know if you can drag the slider over and make yours a little less and make hers a little more. That might help. I'm not quite sure if that would help.
Let's see.
But
I'll do like 2 and 5. Yeah. Yeah, some neat ones. So yeah, I think one of the things that we were talking about was, yeah, like you said, like book clubs or something, and being able to like create a vibe for every person in the book club, and then use that to determine some ideas for the next book in the book club.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see if it worked out. And
yeah,
and also just to like I've been a little hesitant to do too many big modifications like on iterations anymore, since it's feeling pretty good right now. But it'd be interesting to get feedback and maybe do some more tuning. I know like Lit RPG definitely needs some tuning. When I was actually going over like reviewing the grammar for what parses all the genres, the Lit RPG is like not great. So I'll probably fix that at some point for the next training. But
interesting. So that's kind of like setting the list of genres that are actually like supported, and like things outside of that probably don't get fed in as genres as part of the inputs.
Well, so there's like a grammar that kind of describes like what is romance, and it's got like examples in there. It kind of does like I think it's a 4-step pass to where it'll do like prefix heuristics, postfix heuristics on like matching certain words that are common, like dark fantasy, dark romance. And then it eventually falls back, like if it can't get a good match or a confidence match on stuff, it'll encode it as a embedding, and then compare the embedding to the possible genres to try to like land it someplace. But like Lit RPG has things like it should have like reincarnation and isekai and stuff like that as part of Lit RPG, I feel like. And I was just noticing that those point towards something else, just like general fiction or something. So just adjusting the grammar a little bit would make Lit RPG better. But
interesting. So is that's like adjusting the embedding layer and then running a re-embedding pass on all books to generate new vectors for books to do that?
This is like the export step in the data pipeline. So it's where it pulls all the books and gets the data ready to train the model. And then it also creates those contrastive directions based on that list. And so that's why I was saying before that the Two Towers model is actually kind of a textbook, like you just kind of lifted it from the paper, and it's a very standard implementation. But the probabilistic genres was really like the breakthrough in my mind that actually made it start working. Just purely because you figure that a lot of companies would probably be like, we need to get the data right first, and they'd spend a year or two combing through those 20,000 genres or whatever they are, and like really making them tight. And I actually kind of think after going the probabilistic route and kind of suffering through that, I think it's actually in a really good spot right now that gives it kind of a good flavor, if you will, to like how kind of some of the, because like the whole Axiom concept I think is great for like the world building and being able to decouple like a romance from fantasy or something like that, which I never would have thought about that if I wouldn't have kind of stumbled on it with the iteration.
Man. So yeah, have you built anything like this before, or are you kind of like figuring it out as you went?
No, nobody's writing any papers on any novel algorithms or anything. This was I would say, we talked in the beginning about it, and like the North Star was like, we want to build a mixed vibes. Most recommendation engines are just like, give me something that somebody's gonna like. And there might be some re-ranking at the end where you pull back 1,000 books and then filter on something and re-rank based on some sort of criteria. But I think the whole like we're going to do math and mix the vectors thing is not super common. And like, I mean, I think how many times did I drop something in Discord and I was like, check out these recommendations, and everyone was like, well, these are kind of not great. And it was like, it was like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 iterations where I was like asking for feedback until it finally started like, maybe we have something here. So it was definitely a very big trial and error thing for me. It took a while for me to get, the model to actually converge. It kept collapsing when I was training it. And just wouldn't go anywhere. Or it was memorizing just popularity. Like it would just be like, oh, you did fantasy. Great. Here's Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and, Star Wars and all that, and you never got anything interesting because basically the model was just like whatever is popular is what you like, and you'll like it. So man. It was very much a trial and error. I'm sure a machine learning engineer would be horrified, but it runs pretty well, and the actual data pipeline itself, I think at this point is pretty solid. But it was definitely it was a fun project, but I was wondering if it was going to go anywhere after a couple of iterations in. So I'm glad it's getting someplace that actually is feeling well, and hopefully we can keep on improving it with some feedback. So
yeah, I really liked when like as you were developing the model, you created like a Discord bot, and we could like in our private Discord channels like use it to get recommendations and basically like pass in like these signals that we wanted, and then it would just generate some responses. and then we could kind of like, at you on Discord, like, hey, these are really good now, or
Yeah, I think it
why
was
is
running
this
on
on
my
there?
computer too, so it was a slap together Discord bot thing. It was good though because I feel like a lot of times when you approach a machine learning project like this, you have like validating data sets at the end. But like, how do
Mm,
you create validating data sets for somebody's preferences, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, you could create data sets for things like, is it similar to this book or something, and get something relatively accurate. But as far as like the contrastive stuff with people, it's so hard to like actually write testing data and generate testing sets and everything for that. So I was definitely
yeah.
really grateful that people were willing to play with it and give feedback.
I know one way I've seen that happen on like the Netflix contest and in
Oh,
some of the
right.
TensorFlow world is like you give like a 99% data set, and then you hold back like 1% or 5% of the data, and then you say like, what would they rate this book? And then if the algorithm generates, they would rate it a 5, and they actually did rate it a 5, and that's a sign things are going in the right direction.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, probably.
But
Yeah.
but that's like the way that we're doing vibes is a little different than that. Like we're not generating like a rating for every book on how much you'll like it. So we can't do that on a book by book level. We're doing it on like a list level.
Yeah, like the whole set type thing. Yeah, I didn't even.
Yeah.
I guess I never even thought about trying to do like individual books because in my mind, just getting one book back wasn't super valuable because like I wasn't trying to make every single book in the list relevant. I more so wanted it like I kind of mentioned a couple of times now. I want the result to feel good. So you might not go through every book line by line and be like, this is a perfect book for me, but it might be a book that you would expect, even if it's not necessarily one that you're totally driving with. And I guess that was
Mm.
the thing that I was more concerned about. Like, because I feel like you could jack that popularity rate up and get stuff that were like, okay, well, yeah, I'll obviously like these books, but for the people that are looking for something that's not whatever released in the past year, we weren't. It was going to be hard to hit that, I think, or at least a little bit.
Yeah. And I think as we were getting to like the like how do we showcase all these vibes in a way that makes like sense, that's where this like discover page really came together
Yeah, I love
with
this.
things like because you read, and then it's the last book you read. And this was like a concept that came together really out of necessity, where we added dynamic signals. So
Oh, that's
instead of
so
saying
cool.
a specific book, you can say it'll like dynamically pass in the book IDs of the most recent 5 books you read, or the recent 5 authors, or the recent 3 books between this rating and that rating. And
Oh, that's really
to the
cool.
model, it's just taking in an array of books, but hardcover, like the Rails app, is like generating those at runtime and sending them over. It's kind of
That's a
like
great
just an
idea. So it's like when you
unexpected
finish the
use.
book, you come back to hardcover, and it's like here's maybe some next reads for you, unless you want to go splunk in your probably huge what to read next list.
Yeah. It's like, here's some more things to add to your want to read.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be cool, like if we could make apply the vibes to like your want to read list, like somehow give
Mm.
it I'm wondering how it would work because I know like a lot of some people have like thousands of books in their want to read list, but it'd be cool to run the vibes on that and be like, give me the 10 books or the 20 books on my want to read list that are similar to the one I just read, or just
Mm.
whatever one is higher on my collaborative ranking or something like that.
Yeah. I feel like the way you could do that today is like based on your most recent book, and then you like filter for status, status, want to read. And here we go. Things
Oh,
already on my
nice.
list based on the last book I read.
So that's a vibe filtered by the want to read.
Right.
Oh, that's really cool.
So it's
That's
the
way
it's
easier
the
than what I
reverse
was
way,
thinking.
and it has the number of where it is. Like I've been I've been meaning to read like The Wedding People and finish off Emily Henry books. So yeah, this is, that's a neat idea, like filtering by things already on your want to read list.
Yeah, somebody had an idea too about like being able to like cull your want to read list a little bit by like only save like the 500 books that I'm gonna like the most or something, and then have it like delete everything else or something. But it's like a housekeeping tool. But yeah.
One of the things that came up like kind of right towards the end was as we were getting ready to release was um, well, looks like it was a bug. This is caching this book. This book should not be on there, and it looks like it was removed because when you go to this page, it's not on there.
Mm.
But it was this idea of being able to remove a book from a vibe, and that adds it to the exclusions list, which
I know. I feel like the
you had
vibe
already built in.
needs like a straight up exclusion option or something, maybe to help support that a little bit better.
Oh, I think it has it.
Oh, does it?
I think you
Oh,
added that. Yeah, yeah, and it's the thing that yeah, if you have a vibe, then here at the bottom you can exclude specific books, and I don't
oh,
know
that's
why
right.
that
Okay. So it's been a long time since I've looked at the structure of the API.
isn't.
Oh.
But yeah, and I think this is like we were initially talking about those being um, books, but then having like a negative weight. But that, like you said, that would affect the results, rather than this, which just removes it from the results altogether.
Gotcha. And excluding an author, exclude. Oh, I remember actually talking about. So excluding an author would just remove all their books, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And being able to like look at a list of yours and say like, hey, I don't think this one is like kind of Christo, and then it removes it. But then if you went up here to edit it, it would now show up in the exclusions for it.
Oh. Yeah, because we talked about at one point maybe saving the like down votes or the exclusions or something like that, and using it as like a what do you call it? Fine tuning on the model or something. I haven't quite. I mapped that out at one point, and I think when I was looking through it, it seemed like the gains were again like very marginal. So I was like, I don't know if it's worth the effort if you're only gonna get like a 5% maybe improvement or something. But
yeah, maybe as time goes on and we get more and more data of people excluding it, we'll be able to notice like, hey, a lot of people created a romance list, and then it had they all deleted the same book off romance. Maybe that book's not really romance and things like that.
oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean that would be a good way to help the collaborative ranking. I mean, overall, really, the more users that we get, the better the collaborative ranking will be too. So, especially for the more kind of obscure genres.
Yeah, I think yeah, and actually, since we're getting down to the end of the live, are there any other things that are on your mind that are like, this would be a neat thing to add in version 2 or version 3?
One thing I thought was cool was that you could technically do a what you like match with other users. Like if you're looking for users to follow that have similar tastes, you know, we would need to pre-compute users, kind of like how we pre-compute books, so that you could query against them. But that was kind of a cool feature that kind of has come up in our private chats here and there. I think
Yeah.
I think something along the visualization front would be kind of fun to do at some point. But yeah, as far as like the vibe, as far as like what vibes we support, I'm trying to think. Because I feel like we're pretty flexible right now. I think I'd like to do more. Like right now, we have a certain amount of like literature types. I think I'd like to just expand more on you know, like if we're like improve lit RPG, expand on the actual book types, because like right now they're just kind of sourced
Mm,
from the genres themselves and the tags, and so maybe being a little bit more deliberate to what we want to define there would be good. Just to kind of flesh out, like if people scroll down on like a literature type, that all the ones that people would expect are there, stuff like that.
yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask maybe like this one could be a neat one to expand on. But this one, I'm a bit curious on how this works because this one, like, this isn't like an opinion so much as the other ones. This is more like a fact about these books. Like, if we
Yeah,
wanted
and
to
so like
do that.
in our tags and our genres on hardcover, um, there are a lot of things. And so like an audiobook actually shows up as a genre or a tag. And so the grammar that parses things into like book types kind of looks for things like an audiobook is technically like a noun. And so it's pulling things out like that and then inferring that it's not really a
Mm,
genre, it's a medium and stuff. So
gotcha.
so the better that our actual genre data gets, the better the grammar will match to book types and things like that. So I mean, I would just I'm not quite sure what we would do. Maybe using some of the grammar tools that were built for this and actually going back and making, you know, some of the genre data better for all the books as a whole. I know it's a little scary to do, you know,
I
to do something that touches all the books, but at some
I
point in the
wonder
future might be kind of nice to do.
I wonder if some of them could use like these fields too. Like, do you know if you're using like literary type and book category?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Because this
I'd have to
one,
go look.
I could see this one helping to replace that. But
Yeah.
I know like you have, we have this audience one, which we do not have a concept of in hardcover at all. So like creating this as like a inferred audience is really cool too.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like it's I'm trying to remember how the heuristics work because it's not a machine learning thing. It's like looking at the word and being like, is this a noun? Is this a person, place, or thing? Like you know that kind of logic, and that's how it's determining if something is a particular, you know, if it's an audience or like a meet or like a format. Um, but so that could always be adjusted. There's like I said, it's like a grammar file that kind of defines this stuff. So um, and that's where, like I was talking earlier about lit RBG, it's a little hard to get that right. Like I remember when I did it originally, there was a lot of like running it over a bunch of books, testing the output for like books and like tweaking the grammar, and it was a lot of, you know, to get that kind of where it is right now. So um, did we want
Cool.
to talk at all about I saw I've been seeing questions a little bit about like the API possibilities for Vibes. I didn't know if you
Yeah.
had any thoughts around that at all.
Yeah. So Um, so we're planning on having vibes available to all supporters to create new ones, and then um, non-supporters, like anyone who's logged in, would be able to see kind of these couple vibes that we show on your Discover page, like the recommendations vibe, the because you read in the last book, or like based on your recent 5-star reads. Like everyone's going to be able to see these and be able to look at the books under those. um, and I'm thinking that reading all of this data will be possible from the API, and then creating vibes from the API will be possible if you're a supporter.
Okay.
At least that's what I'm leaning towards right now. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think that makes sense because I know we always talk about like wanting to keep our free users like we don't really want to deny them like core functionality. So I think um it's a good way to allow to give people recommendations that are useful for them. And then, you know, like if you really want more knobs, then then paying becoming a supporter is, you know, it really helps us out, and it gives you a few more knobs if you really want to customize your experience. So I think it's a pretty good split there.
Yeah, I I'm curious. Do you have any concerns if someone like created like on the I guess quadrant and recommendation API? if someone created like 1,000 vibes, uh, and like one after another in, let's say like that would be 60 a second for, 20 minutes, or something like that.
Um, so
60
the
a minute
Vibe
for.
API is pretty efficient. It's a Python fast API wrapper that basically just queries Qdrant. It only runs the model to generate the user vector if you have a user on the Vibe. And the model is, as far as generating the user, is pretty efficient. So I would probably be more worried about Qdrant eventually getting overwhelmed. I mean, it's kind of like our search database, right? Like the search database can handle a lot of traffic. Qdrant can handle a lot of traffic. Um, but we're not running Qdrant in cluster mode currently. It's running just a single instance of it. And so I think if we found that if people were really hitting it hard, we'd probably bump it up to a cluster, kind of like how TypeSense, how our search database runs. But Qdrant's cheap to run. It runs on the hard drive. You lose a little bit of speed, but it doesn't need a bunch of memory like TypeSense does. So I guess I'm not too worried about scaling that out personally.
Nice. Yeah. Sounds good to me. And when we generate that user vector, is that like cached in the fast API for some period of time? So if someone creates like a whole bunch of them, or is it regenerated for each one?
It's regenerated for each one. We actually, so that, like, a lot of times you have this cold start problem with users. We technically cold start every user we send in. Like the model is trained with a certain amount of, we'll have to have a talk sometime about how the whole training process goes, but essentially we train with a very small subset of our users just because they need to be dense users that have a lot of book interactions. And so we're cold starting almost all of our users, which means we generate them and the model isn't actually pulling them from itself internally. And so it's pretty fast. It does a single forward pass basically through the machine learning model with the parameters that we send in for a user, and then we get that vector. So the model itself is pretty efficient. It just runs on CPU. It's not running on any big GPUs or anything. Now, if we are pulling books in some way and actually using the model to do the vector normalization and nearest neighbor stuff that we're leveraging the vector database for, we'd probably be struggling with it. But the vector database really does a huge amount of heavy lifting for us that the model just doesn't have to do, which is really nice.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have a feeling like when I click for you, that's a time when it like actually went out, hit that API. So like I'm assuming when I click for you, yeah. So this is like actually hitting that API, hitting Quadrant, returning it, and then the Rails app cached these 250 book IDs, which is why like if I change this view, it's not hitting the API from here on out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to see. Let me stop sharing my screen here. Yeah, I'm excited to have more supporters, like create more vibes and like see how people are using it. I think like once we like have it more available to everyone and be able to see their like recommendation vibe, then we'll really start getting like a ton of feedback on it. And this month we'll be mostly like tuning it and tweaking the interfaces just to make it more user friendly. And just,
I'll definitely be interested to see some feedback on like the actual results and see what can be done to kind of tune the model a little bit better. I definitely am going to fix that litrpg thing before I run the training again, I think, because that should make that a little bit better. But the nice thing is that we can iterate on like that grammar and the model, and every time we do a training pass, it like wipes out Qdrant and completely repopulates it again. So it's nice. Pretty, it takes, I don't know, 2 hours to run the whole pipeline probably. And then we can have fresh results for, whatever modifications we made. So,
yeah. Well, I'm excited to just play with it more. It's been like a fun time sink to just like whenever I have a book I really like or like a trope that I realize I like that I didn't know about. Like my first thought is now always to like go to Vibes and create a vibe for that and see what other books kind of meet those criteria. which is like neat new thing to do.
It is. I mean, I don't know about you. I used to have like this book review blog that I would go to when I really ran out of books to read, and like they're now gone or they got sold off or something, so they're just popular books now. But I'm excited to see if the Vibes is good for taking that place for people, because I know that if anybody's like me, they're definitely looking for some place to find, books to read. So
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and yeah, look for more info on Vibes on the hardcover blog in the next month. We'll be probably launching this to everyone in a couple weeks, before the end of August, and then announcing it probably right around September 1st, sometime around then. Yeah. Thanks everyone.